In this video, we're going to create the foundation for the project which we'll be creating in this chapter, which is a poster for an upcoming music festival. Now we'll get started like any other project by creating a new document, but then we'll place an image that we're going to be using as a reference for artwork that we'll be creating later on. So to get started here, I'm going to begin here in Illustrator, and I'm going to click the Create New button. And this is going to be a print product. Remember, it is a poster. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the print category. And then we can click on View All Presets if we like, but the one that I'm looking for is not listed in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and let's give this a name. I'm going to call this Music Poster. And for the units, we're going to change this to inches just because it makes a little bit more sense. And the poster we're going to be creating is going to be 18 inches wide by 24 inches high. And the poster is going to bleed, I know that already, and so I'm going to go ahead and increase the bleed to 1/8 of an inch so that I have the appropriate amount of bleed needed for a print-based product. We're going to leave the color mode to CMYK and the raster effects to 300 ppi, and then we'll go ahead and click the Create button. And that gives us the poster that we're going to start with. Now I'm going to center this in my screen. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to place an image that we're going to be using as a reference. Now this image is included in the exercise files that you received with this course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the File menu and I'm going to choose Place. And placing is a way that we can grab and place an image inside of our document. And you'll notice that I have this image called guitar.psd. Now down here at the bottom we have a couple of options, and you'll notice that right now the link checkbox is enabled. Now linking basically means that I'm going to place this image in Illustrator, but Illustrator is just going to remember where that graphic lives on my hard drive. And this is a very efficient way of utilizing images in your document because it doesn't make the Illustrator file much bigger at all. However, if you were to uncheck the link checkbox, that will embed the image inside of Illustrator. And I'll show you the difference here. So if I uncheck the link checkbox and I choose Place, and you see I now have the loaded cursor, I'm just going to click and drag to draw a small version of this guitar. Now let's do that again. I'm going to choose File, Place. This time I'm going to grab the same image and I'm going to link it. And I'll place this one right next to the other one. Now the difference here is that if I open my Links panel by going to the Window menu and choosing Links, you're going to see that this is the image that I currently have selected, and this one is linked because you can see down here in the location it's showing me exactly where that image lives on my hard drive. This one, however, which is this image, you can see is embedded. And first of all, it shows me a lot less information down here, but it's also basically going to embed this inside of Illustrator, which is going to make it much, much bigger. So keep that in mind, and why you would want to embed it or why you would not want to really depends on the application. One example is you can create brushes out of images in Illustrator, but in order to do that they must be embedded in the document. However, for general use, I like to link the images because that way I can keep my Illustrator file small, but the other benefit is that if I ever edit that image externally from Illustrator, such as in Photoshop, that image is going to update in my Illustrator document, which is pretty nice. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the embedded version. Just click the delete key on my keyboard. Go ahead and close the Links panel. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reposition this guitar where I want it to be. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit because what I'm going to do is using my selection tool, I'm going to grab one of these corner handles, and while holding down the Shift key, I'm going to drag to make this bigger. And I'm going to reposition this, and I want this to be larger, and I want it to kind of extend in from the side of the poster. And I think I'm going to pull it down a little bit, and I'm going to reposition this where I want this to be. And Remember, we're going to be tracing this a little bit later, so I'm only going to be using this as a reference. And this is very common in Illustrator, where instead of just drawing something from scratch, we're going to use this as a reference. And I think that looks pretty good. We can always change it later if we want to. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to convert this layer, which only has the guitar on it, to a template layer. And to do that, I'm going to double click right here. And I'm going to give this a new name. I'll call this template. And then in the options, I'm going to click on the template checkbox. It allows me to dim the images to any percentage that I wish, and by default it's 50%. I think I'm going to leave it at that. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now you can see that our guitar is kind of ghosted back, it's dimmed, and the template layer is also locked. Now, one other thing I'd like to mention about placing your images, some people like to copy pixels from Photoshop and paste them into Illustrator. And although that is possible, you're going to embed that content every single time. So using the copy and paste method, you only have the ability to embed those images, but using place, you can either link it or embed it. So keep that in mind as you're working with your project. This gives us a good start. So in the next video, we'll start drawing the artwork for the guitar.